What exactly is a perfect movie? A few years ago on Jimmy Kimmel Live, noted master filmmaker Quentin Tarantino listed out 7 films that he considers to be perfect, which by his definition is a film which is unassailable and which crosses all aesthetics to one degree or another and might not be your cup of tea, but there's nothing you can say to bring it down. It's not the most scientific methodology, but when it comes from the mouth of Quentin freaking Tarantino, well, you gotta listen. Seriously, the guy won't shut up. Basically, what he's looking for is a film that so completely and flawlessly achieves its own stated goals that no legitimate criticism can make a dent in its carefully varnished surface. You can dislike it, but you cannot argue that it failed. It's a film that sets its own rules and then follows them to their absolute logical conclusion, leaving no room for error. By this standard, Tarantino has named 7 films he believes fit the bill. So, let's dig into these picks, shall we?
And they just tear it up.
Perhaps Tarantino's most revealing pick is Tobe Hooper's grimy, low-budget nightmare, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In his book, Cinema Speculation, he calls it a one-of-a-kind beast. Its perfection lies not in a polished script, but in its relentlessness. See, this isn't a fun horror movie we're talking about. It's an ordeal. Hooper's cinema verite style, born of low-budget necessity, makes the film feel less like a narrative and more like found footage of an actual atrocity. The perfection is in the feeling of dread that pervades the narrative. It's also, for what it's worth, a masterclass in restraint. Despite its reputation, the film is pretty much bloodless. The horror is implied, built in the viewer's mind. The infamous dinner table scene is a case study in psychological terror. It's just a woman tied to a chair screaming as a family of lunatics cackles. It's unbearable, and that is its goal. At the end of the day, you can call the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a lot of things. Disgusting, unbearable, nihilistic even. But you can't say it failed to be scary. It set out to be a pure, unfiltered expression of dread, and it is arguably the most successful horror film ever made in that regard. Speaking of successful horror films, if Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the art house horror pick, then Jaws is the blockbuster. Tarantino has famously called Jaws the greatest movie ever made, and his emphasis on the word movie is key. He draws a distinction between a film and a movie, the former perhaps being a high piece of art, and the latter a spectacle of crowd-pleasing entertainment. Jaws, he argues, is the best movie there's ever been. But why is it perfect? Well, there's 3 major factors. Firstly, it's a flawless machine of suspense. The famously malfunctioning shark forced a young Steven Spielberg to rely on Hitchcockian principles, basically to infer the horrors rather than show them in all their grand detail on screen. He had to rely on point-of-view shots, the famous barrels attached to the Great White Menace, and creative editing tricks. He also had one other trick up his sleeve, and that is the score by John Williams, which pretty inarguably exists as one of the most iconic film scores of all time. The second factor is that it's a perfect blend of genres. Essentially, the first act is a sort of aquatic slasher flick, the second act is a political thriller, and the third act is one of the greatest men-on-a-mission adventure films ever made.
Fire, you son of a...
It's elevated by character. The film really shouldn't work as well as it does. It's a creature feature, after all. A B-movie by all reasonable standards. But the chemistry and conflict between the main trio, the everyman Brody, the intellectual Hooper, and the mythic warrior Quint, transform it into a rich character study. Point is, Jaws is a machine designed to thrill, and every single part works, save perhaps for the shark, but as we've already gone over, that's a flaw that just pushed the filmmakers to make a better movie. Also, Jaws created the summer blockbuster. You can't argue with them bona fides. Where Texas Chainsaw is about raw dread and Jaws is about thrilling suspense, The Exorcist is about sober, atmospheric horror. Tarantino has stated he himself could never make The Exorcist because he, quote, doesn't have that in him, admitting he'd be forced to add jokes to break the beautifully one-note atmosphere. And man, that's precisely why it's perfect. Director William Friedkin utilized documentary-style realism to treat the demonic possession of a 12-year-old girl with 100% seriousness. It's not just a horror film, it's a profound theological drama. The film's first hour is a slow, methodical burn, a medical procedural that exhausts every scientific and psychiatric possibility before landing on the supernatural. The Exorcist grounds its horror in a deep adult crisis of faith, particularly through the character of Father Karras. His struggle is as important as Reagan's possession. The film earns its shocking, head-spinning, projectile-vomiting climax by building a cold, realistic foundation. It set out to be a deeply serious adult examination of faith and the nature of evil, and well, it succeeded. Moving on from a trio of horror films, Tarantino names the romantic comedy that broke the mold so completely that it became the new template. Annie Hall's perfection is in its formal, structural innovation. It's the anti-rom-com. Woody Allen's masterpiece announces its intentions from the opening monologue. He tells the audience that he and Annie have already broken up. This removes the will they won't they suspense that often defined the genre, allowing the film to become a hilarious, painful, and realistic autopsy of why they broke up. To do this, Allen shatters the fourth wall, pulling random people on the street into his arguments and famously producing Marshall McLuhan from behind a movie poster. He uses split-screen therapy sessions, subtitles to show what characters are really thinking, and even a Snow White-inspired animated sequence. It's a restless, inventive, deeply personal film that perfectly captures the neurotic, conversational nature of modern love. This one is unassailable because it set a new standard. While it's very easy to criticize the man behind the scenes, it's really easy. You can't criticize the film itself for being a cliched rom-com because, well, it invented the very conventions that 1,000 lesser films would copy for decades. If Annie Hall is perfect for its rule-breaking, Young Frankenstein is perfect for its meticulous, loving adherence to the rules. Mel Brooks' film is the definitive parody, but it's more than that. It's a perfect recreation. Tarantino's list celebrates craft, and Young Frankenstein is a work of obsessive, brilliant craft. Brooks' goal was not just to spoof the story of Frankenstein, but the filmmaking style of the 1930s Universal horror films. That right there is the key to its perfection. Brooks shot the film entirely in black and white, used period-appropriate wipe transitions, and most famously tracked down and used the actual lab equipment created by Kenneth Strickfaden for the 1931 Frankenstein. The lighting, sound design, set dressing, it's a flawless technical homage. This authenticity allows the comedy to land with affection, not just mockery. Gene Wilder saying it's pronounced Frankenstein, Marty Feldman's Walk This Way, and the Puttin' on the Ritz dance number are all hilarious, but they work because they exist within a production that takes itself 100% seriously. As a parody, Young Frankenstein is flawless. It's not just a collection of gags, but a loving and technically brilliant film that is as much a Universal monster movie as it is a comedy. Next up, despite being rejected something like 40 times before getting picked up, Back to the Future is widely and rightly considered to possess one of the most perfect scripts ever written. It's absolutely immaculate. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale wrote a masterclass in setup and payoff. Seriously, there is zero narrative fat to this thing. Every single line of dialogue, every prop, every character, plant that pays off later in a deeply satisfying way. Be it the Save the Clock Tower flyer, the Twin Pines Mall becoming the Lone Pine Mall, Biff's lifelong relationship with manure, or Marty inventing rock and roll. Add to that, it flawlessly balances its sci-fi rules, teen comedy, 1950s nostalgia, and action-adventure climax, all of which make up a sort of time-traveling stew that tastes as good as it looks. Is a metaphor that I'm not entirely comfortable with, but we're gonna go with it. In fact, I'm not sure there's much more to say about Back to the Future. You've seen it, I'm sure. It slaps. You simply cannot find a plot hole or a wasted scene. It's a perfect storytelling machine. Seriously, go rewatch it. Out of all the films listed by Tarantino, this is probably the hardest one to level any criticism toward, so moving on. We come to Tarantino's one caveat, The Wild Bunch. He initially names it, then pauses and clarifies that its imperfections are part of its glory, and yet he concludes it is, quote, so unassailable. Hence, while he does take it off the list in the interview, we're keeping it. The Wild Bunch is the auteur pick. It's the antithesis of Back to the Future's clean structure. It's a messy, angry, raw, and cynical film. Sam Peckinpah's masterpiece is a bloody elegy for the Western, for a code of honor, and for a type of man rendered obsolete by the 20th century. If you've seen his other films, you know that this is a clear amalgamation of everything he as an artist was obsessed with throughout his career. Whether or not it's actually perfect, what at least gets it up there is its singular, uncompromising vision. Peckinpah's so-called ballet of blood is designed to force the audience to feel the physical and moral weight of every bullet, thanks to his revolutionary approach to violence. And hell, you can criticize The Wild Bunch for being too violent or too bleak, but that's the entire point. It sets out to be a bloody, tragic poem about the end of an era, and it is the definitive, untouchable statement on that theme. And that's about it. That's all I got. But hey, this is all just a mix of my opinion and Tarantino's. What's yours? Let me know in the comments what movies you consider perfect, and until next time, thank you for watching Screen Rant.